Everyone, a warm welcome to our channel. My name is Yogita and here I'm going to emphasize and explaining the work of the Mikhail Bakunin named as the Anarchy. First of all, I'm going to emphasize the biographical sketch of Bakunin by James Gulliman. He was his close friend and collaborator. He provided a detailed biographical account of the revolutionary ideas. He described Bakunin's early year, born in 1840 to 1876 into a liberal noble family on an estate in Primukino, Russia. His father, once a diplomatic in Italy, imbued in him a spirit of independence. Mikhail Bakunin initially pursued a military career and entering artillery school at 50 and becoming an officer. However, after witnessing brutal suppression of the police insurrection of 1832, he grew disillusioned with the military and abandoned it in favor of the philosophy and revolutionary thoughts. In Moscow, Bakunin immersed himself in philosophy, particularly influenced by the Fichte and Hegel, whose idea about the rationality of existence and the dialectic of changes deeply shaped his thinking. By the 1830s, he had committed himself to revolutionary ideas, leaving Russia for Germany in 1840 to continue his study. There he began articulating his emerging revolutionary ideology, famously declaring, "The desire for destruction is also the creative desire," a phrase signaling his embrace of radical transformation. In Dresden and later Paris, Bakunin became entangled with the leading radical thinker of that time, including the Karl Marx and Pierre Joseph Proudhon. His intellectual and personal relationship with them are complex. While the respected Marx's intellect, he found him vain and manipulative, and he deeply admired Proudhon's libertarian social despite differing some views. Now I'm moving toward the introduction. The introduction presents Mikhail Bakunin as a key figure in the anarchist thought. Those ideas are increasingly relevant in modern era. In highlighting the growing disillusionment with centralized state power, bureaucratic domination, and the failure of traditional Marxist socialism, especially after seeing how socialism in practice turned into authoritarianism, like in Soviet state. Bakunin focused on liberty and freedom. In C as a critical in contrast to Marxist view, which subordinate freedom of historical determinism and economic necessity. Bakunin insisted that socialism without freedom lead to tyranny and brutality, while freedom without socialism result in privilege and injustice. He warned early on that a worker state or the rationalized economy would not eliminate oppression but would only create a new ruling class of the state bureaucrats and technocrats. Foreseeing the rise of the new elite, his critic predicted modern technocracies and authoritarian socialist state well before they emerged. Bakunin rejected Marx's theory that history inevitably evolved according to economic laws. Instead, he stressed the role of the human will, passion for freedom, and the instinct of revolt as key driver of revolutionary changes. He believed that individual liberty could only be realized in collective freedom. No one is truly free unless everyone else is equally free. Another important point is Bakunin emphasized on federalism. Small self-governing communities linked by voluntary federation rather than centralized authority. This vision, once dismissed as utopian, is now seen as a realistic alternative to bureaucratic state. He argued that organization is necessary for freedom, but it must come from below, from the grassroots, not from the ruling elite. Bakunin was aware of the danger even within the revolutionary movement. He showed that revolutionary elite, if unchecked, could become a new dictator. Thus, he proposed creating a secret revolutionary association before revolutionary to guide mass action without taking power themselves. A concept that has sparked much debate because it flirts with the idea of an indivisible dictatorship, which critics used to accuse Bakunin of being authoritarian himself. However, Dogolf clarified that Bakunin's overall goal was always to empower the people and oppose any form of permanent authority. He also believed that revolutions were more likely to occur in underdeveloped countries among peasants, marginalized workers, and lumpen proletariat, not among well-organized industrial working classes of England and Germany, as Marx thought. History, the Russian, Chinese, and the other revolutions proved Bakunin more right than Marx on this. Finally, the introduction discussed the Bakunin influence on modern revolutionary movement, from a student uprising like May 1962-68 in Paris to anti-colonial struggle, where spontaneous revolt by the oppressed masses play a greater role than planned scientific revolution. His distrust of bureaucratic socialism and his warning about the danger of the scientific ruling classes resonate today, especially in light of technological domination, surveillance, state, and global authoritarianism. Now, further, I'm moving toward the chapter first. The chapter first stressed the Mikhail Bakunin political evolution before becoming full-fledged anarchist. During this early period, roughly between the 1842 to 1851, Bakunin transitioned from a philosophical thinker influenced by German idealism to an active revolutionary committed to the liberation of oppressed people, particularly the slaves. His thinking during these phase revolved around the idea of revolutionary pan-Slavism, which viewed the Slavic people as a driving force of future European evolutions. Although Bakunin had not yet developed a fully anarchist ideology, the seeds of the latter anti-authoritarian thought are clearly visible. In his 1842 work, The Reaction in Germany, Bakunin emerged from pure philosophy into a political radicalism. Written in a dense, Hegelian style, the essay criticizes the reactionary spirit gripping Europe after the Napoleonic War. Bakunin warned that harm measures and liberal compromises will not bring real changes. Only through total destruction of existing institutions can genuine freedom be achieved. His famous declaration that the passion for destruction is a creative passion encapsulates his emerging belief that revolutionary destruction is necessary to sweep away the old and create a new society based on liberty. Bakunin 1874 speech on the anniversary of the Polish insurrection saw his deepening political engagement and his commitment to international solidarity. Although he was Russian, Bakunin only sides with the Poles against Tsar's operations. He argued that Russia, far from being a force of civilization, was the chief oppressor of Europe, symbolizing the rawest form of the despotism. Bakunin called for the liberation of all oppressed nations, believing that national struggle must be linked to broader social revolutions. These speeches mark the beginning of his lifelong insistence that political freedom and social justice are inseparable. In 1848, amid the wave of the revolution across Europe, Bakunin published his Appeal to the Slaves, a major theoretical statement. Here he asserted that the bourgeoisie has abandoned the revolutionary causes and that the working classes and peasants must take lead. Bakunin called for the destruction of the Austro-Hungarian Empire and establishment of the Federation of Free Autonomous Slavic Republics. Importantly, Bakunin pan-Slavism is not imperialistic. It is federalistic, anti-imperial, and revolutionary in nature. He believed that the slave is still uncorrupted by Western capitalist civilization, have preserved a more authentic human spirit, and thus hold the key to Europe's future liberation. The final text in this chapter, From the Confession to Tsar Nicholas, 1851, represents a more complex and controversial movement. Written while imprisoned in brutal conditions, the Confession appeared to suggest a more authoritarian tone, appealing to the Tsar to lead a kind of national patriotic liberation. Some historians have interpreted this as a betrayal of his earlier principle, while others view it as a tactical move made under duress. Even in this document, Bakunin expressed his desire for a radical transformation of society on the need and will of the people, although his language appears less revolutionary and more conciliatory due to his dire circumstance. Throughout these writings, Bakunin began to form the central idea that will later define his anarchism: a deep distrust of centralized authority, belief in revolutionary instinct of the masses, rejection of bourgeois liberalism, and the insistence of the necessity of destruction to create a new, freer social order. His pan-Slavism served as a transitional phase, rooted in the liberation of the nation but moving steadily toward a broader, universal revolution that rejects all domination. Although still shaped by nationalism and some illusion about Persian monarchism, Bakunin's fundamental commitment to freedom, social justice, and revolutionary actions is already firmly established by the end of this period. Now, I would like to move toward the second chapter. These chapters collect some Bakunin's most important work from the year when he fully embraced anarchism. Mid to late 1860, the central theme in this systematic explanation of anarchism as a revolutionary theory and practice. Revolutionary Catechism, 1866. Bakunin lay out a program for revolution, focusing on the total destruction of the old state structure and their replacement with a federated society based on a voluntary association. He advocated for equality, freedom, and a stateless social order where property is collectivized. His emphasis is not just economic but also deeply moral. True liberty requires radical restructuring of society from the ground up. National Catechism, 1866. In this complement to the revolutionary Catechism, Bakunin discussed in his complement to the discuss nationalism critically. He defended national liberation but rejected the idea of national states. Instead, he called for the federation of free peoples. His nationalism is anti-statist and internationalist. Oppressed nations have the right to free themselves but should strive toward a global libertarian society. Federalism, socialism, or anti-theologism, 1867. One of Bakunin's most important essays. Here he criticized Rousseau's concept of social contract and the state sovereignty. He argued that any centralized state, even if democratic, and its operation. He proposed federalism, a bottom-up form of political organization, as the foundation of the free society. Bakunin also attacked organized religion, particularly Christianity, for instilling obedience and hierarchy. The program of the International Brotherhood, 1867. Bakunin outlined the secret organization, the International Brotherhood, whose goal is to coordinate revolutionary activities across Europe. He envisioned a decentralized network revolution with small autonomous groups connected by common principles. Though secretive, the Brotherhood would not become a ruling power after the revolution. Its purpose was to guarantee the destruction of the state structure. The policy of the International, 1867. Bakunin discussed how anarchists should operate within the the International Working Man Association, contrasting his idea with Karl Marx's strategies. He warned against the danger of the international being turned into an authoritarian organization. He argued for promoting decentralization and workers' direct action instead of centralized political parties. Overall, second chapter shows Bakunin building a complete anarchist program based on liberty, equality, and spontaneous self-organization as an alternative to the state socialism promoted by the Marx and others. It marked the transition from the utopian dreaming to the real political organization among workers and peasants. Bakunin's profound suspicion of authority, whether political, religious, and scientific, science throughout all these texts. Thank you.